Dear everybody, I am sick of how we Christians deal with the world.
Culture war, equality issues, red state, blue state, you hear what I'm saying? All we Christians can seem to do is just get caught up in it.
This is For the Life of the World, and what we're trying to do here is establish a clear perspective on being in the world, but not of it.
Oh man, good morning everybody. Hey, if you've been around here at all for any length of time, there is a phrase you hear repeated quite often. In fact, it's my email signature. It has been for about the last 5 years. We end every service with these words. It's the words that are printed on the front of your worship guide, for the life of the world. And what is that? Well, it's actually the answer to a question. It's the answer to a question we've been asking here at Hulen Street for about the last 5 years. And here's the question. The question is this: what is your salvation for? Now, if you've been around Christianity at all, even maybe I think if you're here just investigating Christianity, you have a pretty good idea of what we have been or what Christianity will say it will save you from. Right? We can articulate that. What have I been saved from? But we've never really considered the idea of what have I been saved for? And the answer to that question is we have been saved for the life of the world. What does that mean at all? Right? Well, it means this, is that God invites us in salvation, like when we become Christians, he invites us to actually participate with him in the work he is doing in the world, right? And how do we do that? Well, we get the chance to benefit the world, to bless the world, to contribute to the world in the things that we do, in the life that we live. Like we believe that God is still working in the world, and that as a part of that work, we are able to contribute to that. We are able to advance his agenda in the world and those things. So that's what we want to do. We live for the life of the world. Now, one of the greatest ways that any of us will ever contribute to the life of the world, any of us will ever invest in the life of the world, is going to be through our work, through our vocation, through our career, through our jobs. And why is that? Well, because you're going to spend about 100,000 hours of your life engaged in work, engaged in your vocation or your career. That is a significant investment of you, of your life, and that's time you will never get back. And so that is going to be a big part of how we can contribute to the world. Now, there's a lot of different other avenues that we do that, but this is going to be a big part of it. And so because of that, we want to circle back to this idea on a regular basis to understand and to make sure that we comprehend just how important this is. Because here's the problem. We don't think of the work that we do in a spiritual context or in a sacred context. We don't think of it as something that God is really involved in. And that's something that really does, it's one of the things that breaks my heart. Like everybody has a thing that kind of just resonates with them. And the thing that really resonates with me is this idea that there are those of you out there and you think that the work that you are doing is kind of like your burden to bear, right? This is just what you have to do in order to survive. It's how you provide for yourself and for your family, right? But you don't think it has really any significance. It has no real value other than the fact that, you get a paycheck every couple of weeks and you're able to, take care of your kids and put braces on and pay for college and all those things. But you don't understand the sacredness of it. You don't understand the significance of it. You don't understand the dignity that is inherent in the work that you do. In fact, some people look at the things that I do and they think that my job is inherently more significant than your job, whatever job that may be. And nothing could be further from the truth. I don't think my job is any more or less significant than your job. We have different jobs. We occupy different roles. But my job is not, God doesn't look at my job and what I do in a way that's more favorable than he looks at your job. But we've lost that, all right? And so because of that, we've drained Mondays from significance, right? We drained all of the value out of the work that we do because we don't understand how it connects to the work that God is doing in the world. And so, we just don't have a reason really to get out of bed anymore. And that's hard. That's tough. Research tells us that on Mondays, more employees are late to work, productivity is lower, and get this, I thought this was fascinating, The average person on Monday, the average person does not smile until noon. That's Monday, right? I get that. I mean, that first 4 hours of Monday, you're like, no. And my job is very similar to your job in that vein. Like, you spend all week long kind of working to the weekend, and I'm doing that, right? I've been working to prepare for this moment, right? And this is a great moment. This is the highlight of my week, is being here with you and getting to do this. And there's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of preparation, a lot of study that goes into it, right? And I enjoy it. It's fine. It's good. It's, but it is work, and it takes something from me. And I get to kind of do it here right now with you, and we get to kind of take a step together. But you know what happens tomorrow morning? I'm going to wake up, and the rock is going to be at the bottom of the hill again, right? And we got to start the process all over. And my work can sometimes just be just as repetitive as your work. And so Mondays are just Mondays, right? And it's hard. And my job's no different than your job in that way. I came across this picture. It's a picture of a Post-it note stuck to the wall of a cubicle. And it says this, so if you could read it. Remember, working here means your dreams are slowly dying. Yeah, I won't tell you whose office I found that in, but some of you are looking at that like, I think that's my handwriting. We all feel that way, right? And why is it? Why is it we dread Monday so much? We would dread it because it may feel like that every day that you're in your job, a little part of you dies. Now, here's what we do. We mistakenly think that the answer to our problem is a new job, right? I don't like my job. I don't like my boss. I don't like who I have to deal with. I don't like the thing I'm doing. So what I need is I need a new job so I can have a new boss and maybe get more money and new environment, all that stuff. Here's the problem. You can change your employer. You can change your employment. But you can't change your environment, really. And what I mean by that is this. We live in what we call a fallen world, which means the world just doesn't work like it was meant to, like it was designed to, right? And the world is a beautiful place. And there's a great beauty in the world, and there's goodness in the world, but at the same time, we also know there's suffering and there's pain in the world, and that fallenness, right, that's kind of injected into all of the world, and it comes out in the work that we do. And how do we know that? Well, because the thing that you do, as good as it is, right, even if it's fulfilling, and my job's pretty fulfilling, right, but it's still tiring. Right, every job will have an element of toil to it, if you will. And no matter how fulfilling your job is, you always are going to need a break from it. Right? There's no job that's so fulfilling that you don't need a break from it, mine included. And so we have this, you can change your employment, but you can't change your environment. So every job, every vocation is going to have its fair share of disappointment and conflict and horrible bosses and angry customers and annoying coworkers. But the presence of frustration does not mean that there is an absence of significance. I'm going to say that one more time. The presence of frustration in your work and in your vocation does not mean that there is an absence of significance. Now, I'm not saying that you might not need to change jobs, right? That could be a valid reason, it could be a better opportunity for you. But I am saying is this. I am saying that what you may need to do, instead of changing your job, is maybe to change how you approach your job, maybe to change how you see your job. I want to give you an example here. A guy named Paul, if you're not familiar, Paul is an interesting story. Paul hated Christians, and really his life's mission was to destroy Christianity, to just crush the church, right? And then in a really dramatic turn of events, Paul becomes a Christian, and then he goes and becomes one of the greatest church planters in the world. He plants churches all over the place, and he writes letters to these churches, and that's really a lot of what we have in the New Testament are these letters that Paul wrote to these churches. And so Paul wrote a letter to a church in a place called Corinth, and he's talking to these people in Corinth who are essentially new Christians. And part of the challenge of being a Christian and being a new Christian is integrating this faith that you have into your life, right? Because it does. It's a faith that does affect how you see the world. It affects and influences your relationships and your marriages and your parenting, and it also should affect and influence your work, the things that you're doing. So he's writing this letter to these people as they're trying to work this new faith into their life. And he's dealing with some questions that they're asking. And he says here, nevertheless, each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them. So the point is this, like we're saying right now, the key is not what you do, it's how you do it, right? How are you living, right? How are you living? He's sure to live as a believer. That's where he weights it. That's where the significance lies. To live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned to them. Hold on to that word assigned is really key there. And he says, just as God has called them, this is the rule I lay down in all the churches. So we have these new believers, and they've got this new faith, and it's causing them to wonder, what do I do with this now, right? Do I just kind of shut down my business? Do I pack up my stuff? Do I leave where I'm at? And do I go somewhere else? Do I do something else? Right? Do I leave my job? Maybe even do I kind of say goodbye to my family and go and just be a missionary somewhere and go tell people about? And Paul basically says, no, just stay where you are. Stay right where you are. You don't have to leave your job. You don't have to abandon your position. You don't walk away from the life that you have in order to serve God and to please him. In fact, a few verses later, he says, brothers and sisters, each person, as responsible to God, should remain in the situation they were in when God called them. When he says when God called them, he says, wherever you were when you became a Christian, right? When God called you, God spoke to you, and you began that relationship with him, whatever situation you were in, whatever job you were doing, you want to stay there. Stay right there, stay where you were, where and when God called you. So this is what we need to take with us on Tuesday morning, because, tomorrow is the one Monday we look forward to, right? The one Monday we'll smile before noon is tomorrow. So what do we do on Tuesday morning? Here's the thing you need to take. In both of those verses, Paul uses a word called. In verse 17, he says assigned, and in verse 24, he actually says called, right? And he uses this word called and assigned, and he says, God, even before you became a Christian, in a way, God assigned the work that you were doing to you. He called you to that work before he even called you into relationship. That God's working kind of behind the scenes in that way. And so what he does is he takes a word called, right? Called into relationship, called into ministry, right? Back in the day when I was 18 years old, I felt called to ministry, to vocational ministry. And he uses a word that is just spiritually loaded, but he applies it to a part of our life that we have drained a lot of spiritual significance from. So he takes a spiritually loaded term and he applies it to an unspiritual part of our life. He says, God called you into a relationship, but you know what? He also called you into your vocation. And so some of you, here's the thing, that's what vocation means. It means a calling. A sense that God has put me right where I am. A sense that God has been working in my life. He equipped me, gifted me, gave me abilities to do the work that I'm doing in the way that I'm doing it and where I am doing it. And I know we can get frustrated in our work and we can get tired in our work and we think we need a vacation. You don't need a vacation, you need a vocation. And what I mean by that is you need a sense of God's calling in your life to the thing that you are doing. That it is, in fact, a sacred endeavor. It is, in fact, a spiritual thing. So we don't need to change our job. We need to change how we approach our job and see our job. And the greatest thing that we can do, and here's how it works across every profession, right? That's the challenge, right? There's a room full of people with a room full of professions. And even if you're engineers, I have learned there's about 20 different ways to be an engineer, right? Even if you're a nurse, there's 20 different ways to be a nurse and a teacher at different grades, right? There are different categories, but there's all different ways of doing it. It's near impossible for me to kind of draw a direct line of application that kind of touches every single one, but there's one way I can do that. There's one way that I could talk about applying this idea of kind of re-examining your work and your job that touches every profession, no matter what it is. And it's kind of the reimagination of your job as a platform for service. A guy named Robert Bella wrote this, and I love this quote. He said, "To make a real difference, there would have to be a reappropriation of the idea of vocation or calling." He says, a return in a new way to the idea of work as, listen, as a contribution to the good of all and not merely as a means to one's own advancement. That's where we have drained our vocations and our callings of significance and of sacredness, because we have approached them as a means to our own advancement. And that's why we are frustrated. See, because what happens is we look to our work, and why do we want advancement, right? Just on the surface, we could say, well, there's good things that come with money and authority and influence, and there's security and safety and all of those things. That's good, right? But really, what are you looking for? What are you hoping your work provides to you? You could say, I want more money. You could say, I want a better office. You could say, I want more authority, right? I want more influence. You could say all those things. But let's get a little deeper than that, right? Those things are good, and that's right. That is correct. But there's actually something deeper driving that. And what are you actually looking for? Well, you're looking for significance. You're looking for fulfillment. You're looking for validation. You're looking for something that tells you you're worth something. And a lot of times we use our work and the avenues of achievement and accomplishment and reward through compensation to tell us we are someone and we have become somebody, right? What do we all want to be? We all want to be somebody that's recognized when we walk into the room, and we want to be respected, and we want to be remembered. And we look to our work to try to accomplish that. We look to our work for our greatness, for our validation, for our beauty, if you will, to make us someone. The problem with that is that when you look to work to do that, work becomes an idol. And work as an idol does what every idol does. It lies to you. It never fulfills a promise to you, because an idol can never give you what it promises. It can never satisfy in the way it tells you it will satisfy. And in the end, work as an idol will crush you. It'll just crush you. It just crushes all of your joy, because you're still trying to work to be something and to be someone, and we all want that. But how do we change that? Well, we have to look at our work in a new way, and we look at our work as a way that's not about me, it's about who I get to serve. See, this is a principle that you find repeatedly in all of the Bible. I want to tell you a story about two brothers. And these two guys were actually disciples, right? And you think these guys as disciples, they kind of got it together, right? As disciples, the guys that Jesus chose to be closest to him, these guys are the cream of the crop. No, they're just as messed up as the rest of us. And you're about to see just how messed up these guys are. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, these two brothers, their names are James and John. They come to Jesus with a request. Now, here's what's interesting. The timing of the request is the worst, right? Jesus has just predicted what he is about to face when they get to Jerusalem. And it's the most detailed prediction of what he is about to endure when they arrive in Jerusalem, right? And it's going to end in his crucifixion. And he's told them that. And he's been very plain about it. He's not being mysterious. He's not being cryptic. He's saying, this is what's going to happen when we get to Jerusalem, right? Okay, think about that. Those words are still hanging in the air when James and his brother John sidle up next to Jesus and they say to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." Seriously. This is how self-centered they are, right? He has just talked about how he is going to suffer and die for the sins of humanity, and they come up and go, "Okay, this is our chance. This is our time. We want you to do for us whatever we want." Right? What translation? We want you to serve us. And listen, we all do this. I've done this. We've done this. I tell you all the time. When someone comes to Christianity, they always come for selfish reasons. I did, you did. Why? Because Christianity offers something that we need. And I need that, so I come to that. But there's a moment that switches. There's a moment that changes in our growth and in our maturity. These guys are still there, right? Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And he goes, okay, guys, what do you want me to do for you? He humors them. And they say, grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory. Now, what have they done? They did what a lot of people did. They correctly identified that Jesus was the Messiah, right? He was going to be the conquering king, right? But they didn't understand the kind of Messiah that he came to be. And so when they hitched their wagon to Jesus, what they saw a way to advance themselves, right? Who were these guys before? I mean, they're uneducated, they are blue collar. Remember, this is a class-dominated society. It was really difficult, if not impossible, to be elevated above the class you were born into. But this was the way, man. They could ride Jesus all the way to the top, right? He was like the elevator that would take them to the top because that's where they wanted to be, because if they could get to the top, what did that mean? That means I'm somebody, and I've done something with my life. I'm worth something. I'm validated. They want the same things we all want, we still want. And what do? They go applying for a new job. We want to sit at your right and your left. They want the positions of authority and power. They're not trying to be Jesus, but they want to be real close to where he was when he comes in his power and his glory. And so they're trying to fulfill or advance their own agenda that will end in their own fulfillment. And Jesus says, you have no idea what you're asking for. You have no idea he says, can you drink the cup I drink? Can you be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? Let me kind of put these two things together. It's kind of a weird language, but two things together. He says, the cup, can you drink the cup? The cup, for whatever reason, was a metaphor for suffering. So he says, I'm going to drink a cup, I'm going to suffer. And he says, not only going to suffer, he says, I'm going to be baptized into suffering. What does it mean to be baptized? If you've seen it before, somebody goes all the way under the water, right? They're buried. That's the picture. It's a picture of burial. Jesus says, guys, listen, I'm going to be exalted, but let me see how I'm going to get there. I'm going to go to Jerusalem, and I'm going to be immersed in suffering. Are you ready for that? Can you do that? And of course, they have no idea what they're asking. Oh, yeah, we can. Yeah, we can. No, they can't. They have no idea. And so Jesus says, listen, here's how it's going to work. And he flips the whole economy. And he says, any authority that you have, and these are going to be guys, listen, as messed up as they are, these guys are the guys he's going to kind of give the charge to take the church to the world, right? It's all resting on these guys, right? We're lucky to be here today, all right? If this is the quality of individual that Jesus has chosen with the responsibility of taking the gospel and the church to the world after he's gone, we really are lucky to be here, right? Because they're still very selfish, very self-centered. And he says, listen, there's going to be a day I'm going to be gone and you're going to be in charge. You're going to have authority. But whenever the Bible grants authority, it always grants authority to be used for the benefit and the blessing of someone other than the one who has the authority. See, they had it all wrong. See, the goal in God's world, the goal is not to command, the goal is to serve. And he says this, he goes, you know that those who are considered rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. He's exposing their role models. You guys got the wrong role models. You keep wanting to aspire to be those people that you see that are above you or beyond you. You've got the wrong role model. You're trying to pattern your life after the wrong people. He says, listen, you want to be great? You want to be someone? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be great. There's nothing wrong with wanting to have fulfillment or satisfaction or significance, but you're not going to get it the way you think you're going to get it. He says, it shall not be so among you. Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. And whoever would be first among you must be the slave of all. He says, greatness and goodness and prominence, guys, in God's world, it comes through a whole different way. It's not the way you think it's going to be. It's through service. It's through giving yourself away, not through getting. See, these guys are operating under a principle that we still operate under. I am somebody when I have someone who serves me. And Jesus says, no, it's different. You become somebody when you become someone who serves. That's the key. And the service that we do, we think of it as something that's extracurricular, right? Service is extraordinary. It's where we step out of our normal day and our normal routine and our normal rhythms to do something to serve someone else, right? We mow a neighbor's yard, or we serve in the preschool, or we help a friend to move, right? It's something that's extraordinary. It's something that's out of the norm. But really, here's the thing. And what I'm trying to get to is this. You have a chance to serve someone every single day through the job that you do, through the work that you have. Yeah, you might have some authority, and every work to some level has some authority. And your authority is not ever meant to be used for your benefit, but it's meant to be used for the benefit and the blessing of those you have authority over. It's really about them, not about you. The primary way we serve the greater good of the world, that we serve our neighbor, is through the work that we do. And the light goes on for us when we see our work not just as a means of survival, but as a platform to serve your coworkers, to serve your customers, to serve your community, to serve your society, to serve your family. There's a moment in history, the seismic change in the church called the Reformation. And one of the key elements of the Reformation was how Christians began to look and to talk about work. Before the Reformation, there was a big wall between what we call secular and sacred. And that wall still exists to some degree, right? There's the sacred world, there's the secular world. Secular world really generally, very simplistically, is Monday through Saturday. The sacred world is Sunday. And when we divide the world like that, what that means is the secular world is not impacted or influenced by the sacred world, because we have this division. And so they come in the Reformation, they say there's no division. All of life is sacred. Monday is as sacred as Sunday. And they say that the calling to be a priest or a monk is just as significant as the calling to be a carpenter or a cobbler, anything else. They pointed to the dignity of work. And they said, here's what we know. God is a God who provides. There's a theological term called the providence of God. It's one of God's attributes. God provides. Through his greatness, through his wisdom, he provides all that we have. He provides all that we need. God's providence. God provides. How does God practically provide for every person? He does it through the work that we do. God cares for and clothes and protects and provides and heals and comforts and feeds the human race through our actual work, through our jobs. Martin Luther said this: every occupation has its own honor before God. Ordinary work is a divine vocation or a calling. In our daily work, no matter how important or mundane, we serve God by serving the neighbor, and we also participate, listen, in God's ongoing providence for the human race. Now, let's talk about God's providence just for a minute. We have this moment in Psalm 145. The psalmist writes this, and he is highlighting this attribute of God, this God, the idea of God's providence. He says, "The eyes of all look to you." And he says, "And you," talking about God gives them their food at the proper time. And he says, you open your hand, and you satisfy the desires of every living thing. That's a pretty broad statement. That's a pretty bold statement. It's saying God feeds every living thing. We sit down to eat, and we eat because God has provided what we have on our plate. But how does he do that exactly? How does that really happen practically? Like if your kids were like my kids, now my kids they're older now, they know the truth of it. But when they were little, my kids were like your kids. They thought the pantry was a magic box, right? And just things appeared there, right? And they really had no idea what all went not just in my life, but in the life of hundreds of thousands of people. People we will never know, people we will never meet, in places we will never go. All of their work, all of their effort, all of their time, all went towards helping us put a product on the shelf in our pantry. Right? We know as adults, right, how it works. We know the real story, but we don't often stop to consider the whole story. Think about just a simple loaf of bread. There are hundreds of thousands of people who have worked in all the different areas and ways to get us there. You know, we think about it's just the bread, but what about the person that designed the bag? What about the person who works in the twist tie factory? I don't know, there's a million things, right? All of those things that come together to put that loaf on your shelf. And we look at that, and here's a struggle. It doesn't feel supernatural. It doesn't just supernaturally appear. It doesn't feel spiritual. But when you stop to consider all that has gone into it and how intricate it is and how valuable all of it is, and you stop to consider how God has, in his wisdom, how he has called and assigned and orchestrated everyone, you begin to see his hand in it. Where do you find this in the Bible? Let me give you one example, one quick example. In a book called Isaiah, this guy Isaiah writes these words. He goes, when a farmer plows for planting, it's a little bit of a longer passage, let me read it. When the farmer plows for planting, does he plow continuously? Does he keep on breaking up and working the soil? When he has leveled the surface, does he not sow caraway and scatter cumin? Does he not plant wheat in its place, barley in its plot, and spelt in its fields? He's talking about, what is he talking about? He's talking about practical farming methods. That's all it is. It's how people farm, right? He's talking about how you farm to get the most out of the field. And this is there is nothing more practical than this. But why do they do that? And he says this, he says, God instructs him, the farmer. God has instructed him and teaches him the right way. You and I look at these things and we think, well, it's all about our skill and our discovery and invention and advancement. But skill and discovery, invention and advancement is really just a product of God working in us, working through us. Yeah, is God directly doing it? No, but wait, what are you? You are an image bearer. Even if you're not a believer, you're an image bearer. And as an image bearer, what does that mean? It means you have ingenuity. It means you have the ability to innovate. It means you're creative, right? It means you're curious, right? And all the things that allow us to take our world and to break it open and see how it works, and then to mix its parts and pieces to produce more than it could have been by itself. That is a product that comes from our image bearing, which means that's still God working in the world through the people he put in the world with the image of him stamped on us to do the things that only we can uniquely do for the world. It's an amazing thing. One scholar says what appears as a discovery is actually the Creator opening his book of creation and revealing his truth. We don't think God's interested in farming methods, but he is. All truth, Francis Schaeffer, all truth is God's truth. It's interesting. All vocations, Thomas Merton, one of my favorite quotes, Thomas Merton, all vocations are intended by God to manifest his love in the world. Your vocation, your job you're going to go to is a way to manifest, to make real God's love in the world. How do you do it? Through serving. Because work is not just a way to make a living. Work is the primary way we love our neighbor. Not just a way to make a living, it's the primary way we love our neighbor. And so, yeah, your job is not perfect, but it does have a purpose. And you are a part of something. You need to see this. You are a part of something that's greater than you ever imagined, that's bigger than you've ever considered, than you've ever dreamt. You are playing a part in the work that you do. You are playing your part, my part. We're all playing a part in God's redemptive story over all creation. And we all have these jobs that require different skills and different responsibilities, and we're all working for different outcomes. And it's, like I said before, it's really difficult for me to apply, to kind of draw a direct line of sight, right, between these truths and your specific job. But there's a way that we can help all of us understand it. There's a way that we can help all of us kind of reimagine the work that we do. And it comes through 3 very simple questions. And what we do is, around here, to kind of keep this in front of us, we will occasionally find one of our partners and we'll interview them about their work, about their job, about their vocation. And we will ask these 3 questions through this interview. And we do this to get them to think about their job in a new way, but we also do it, and we do it occasionally, because we know as you see them answering those questions for their work, it's going to help you ask and answer those questions you may have never considered before, to ask and answer those questions for your work. So recently, we sat down with Courtney Bennett, who's a partner here at Hulen Street, got a really cool job you're going to see here in just a minute, and we asked her those 3 questions, so we got a chance to film it, and I want you to take a look at it. So take a look at this.
Courtney Bennett and my husband and I own the Play Street Museum in Fort Worth, Texas, and we're currently in the process of opening a second location in Mansfield. Play Street Museum is a small format children's museum. Our intention here is to take kids away from the screens and let them learn through play, whether that be imaginative play where they dress up, they can play with our manipulatives like blocks and activities on our tables, they can do slime, paint your own pottery, and just really have a good time here. So when Zach and I decided to open Play Street, it was a big change for our family, but we went into it with the intention that we were gonna let God use Play Street to serve the community. So we've done that through giving kids a safe and fun place to come explore the world around them. We have 2 baby dolls at Play Street. I've been told by plenty of moms that we should have more baby dolls because all the little girls wanna play with them. We have 2 baby dolls, and that is intentional because we want the children to learn how to share. Their brokenness is on display when they are fighting and yanking over the same doll, but we're able to use that as a teaching moment and hopefully give them a life lesson with that baby doll. Kids can come in and play and have a great time, but we also want to focus on the moms and just serve them like Jesus would and let them come in and put their feet up, take a few minutes to scroll through their phone, read a book. We've even had people cross-stitch here just to give them some rest and let their kids play. A few days after having to shut our doors down during the pandemic, I remember I was up here and just wondering what God's plan was for the next steps at Play Street, because nobody wanted to take their kids to a high-touch children's museum at that moment. And it was brought to us shortly after that the Texas Health Hospital was looking for a daycare opportunity for their employees because so many daycares were shutting down and not giving the employees consistent childcare. So we were able to partner with them and provide childcare to their employees. We just were able to love on those kids. Their parents were working long hours, and the parents knew they had a safe place to bring their kid, but they could go work at the hospital, which was just really grueling work at that point. And it just made us feel really good in that God was able to use this despite that huge obstacle to still serve the community like we originally intended this place to be for.
Play Street Museum. If you've not been, it is awesome. We cannot wait to have a staff day there. Enjoy that. But listen, 3 questions, really, and 1 question, right? How does your work give you a unique perspective of the brokenness of the world? Because it does, right? And you need to begin to see that. And some of you, that's where your frustration lies. That's where the difficulty is. That's where the challenges are, because the world is a broken place. And you come face to face with that. But the second question is, how does your work allow you to participate with that redemptive story, right? Kind of in the big macro sense. How are you, able to help solve the problem, if even just a little bit, and even if only for a little time? How are you able to solve some of the problem of that brokenness? How are you able to bring some comfort, even a little healing into the world that is broken because of the work that you do? Because the answer is there. You've never thought about it, but it's there. And then the last thing, in a more specific way, kind of the macro to the micro, right? In a more specific way, how are you able to affect, to impact, to influence? How are you able to love your neighbor, that one person right across from you, whether it's a customer or whether it's an employee or whether it's a boss, right? How are you able to impact them? How are you able to love your neighbor through the work that you are doing? You know, for too often we've been told that the only significance your job has is that it's a platform for you to tell people about Jesus. And yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We should use our work as a place to engage people with the gospel. But your work has inherent worth and dignity, even beyond that. Not just practically, but in reality. And that's what I want you to know. It's what I want you to feel. Now, here's the last thing I want to say. It's so important. You'll never understand the fullness of your work or the significance of your work until you look at your work as a way to serve those that God has put around you. But the only way you are free to serve is if you know you're secure. Right? Remember what I told you before? What do we look to our work to do? We want our work to validate us. We want our work to give us significance and worth and, to tell us that we're somebody, to tell us we have value, right? That's what we want our work to do. Essentially, what you're asking your work to do is you're asking your work to save you. And your work can't do that. It can't make you into the person you want to be and know you need to be. See, the only way you can be free to serve is if you know, even outside of your work, even before you lifted a finger for work, you have to know that you are someone, that you have inherent value, that you are, as you are, loved to the bottom. You are loved. And that's what the gospel tells us. See, what the gospel does is it says you're accepted and you're secure. And because you're accepted and you're secure in who Jesus is and not in what you've done, now suddenly there's a freedom that comes with that. I can give my life away because of that. And that's why Jesus said at the end of that time with James and John, you know what he said? For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to give his life as a ransom for many. That was his job. That was his vocation, to serve us by giving his life away. And why did he have to? How could he do that? Because he knew. He didn't have to prove himself. He didn't have to earn God's favor. He was already accepted. He was already safe. He was already secure. He was already set. God's love was already set on him. And I'm telling you, it can be set on you. And when we understand that, when we know that, when we accept that, when that gets inside of us and it goes down to the bottom of us, now suddenly we don't have to look to our work to do for us what only God can do. Because we feel safe and we feel secure. You want to know more about that? Let's talk. I want you to get your Connect card out. Give us a way to contact you. Check a box on there that resonates with you, whatever next step you need to take, or just meet us at the next step station and let's talk about what that looks like. Let's talk about how you can have that safety, that security, how you can know that freedom. And you can go to your work and you can look to your work to do something that you've never asked it to do before. Be something you've never asked it to be before, because God has gotten control. All right, so let's pray together. Father, thanks for this moment. And I pray that we get up on Tuesday morning and we head to work. We do so with a new sense of our purpose and our meaning, the new sense of our significance, that we don't have to be something because we already are something. We don't have to achieve something because you already achieved it for us. We don't have to prove our worth or our value, that God, you've already made that declaration so clear and that you died for us. Thank you for that. So Jesus, help us to go to work with that truth in mind. We pray this in your name. Amen. Okay, so until we meet again, seek the Lord through his word, pray to the Lord through his spirit, tell of the Lord with your words, and glorify the Lord in your work. Until we meet again, live your life this week for the same reason that Jesus gave his. All together, for the life of the world. Love you guys. We'll see you next week.